So, processes are a way of interacting in the world, inside and out, that either can be health promoting or health degrading. And decades of research have shown that there's some core ways of relating to your thoughts, your emotions, ways of acting, ways of seeing yourself, and ways of being in the world that can lead you to feel open, engaged, and purpose driven. Some of these things we've talked about already on season one. We've talked about values. We've talked about acceptance. We've talked about committed action. And we've also talked about getting a little bit of space from your thoughts. All of those are core processes to human flourishing. And that's what Stephen Hayes is talking about when he's talking about a process based approach. And so is mindfulness, being present in the here and now. What research has found is that these ways of being in the world are really key to things like being a good parent or being a high performance athlete or surviving trauma. So, how I want you to try this on is I want you to think about a time in your life when you were thriving, when you felt like you were growing, you felt like you were engaged in a meaningful way, when you felt alive and vibrant, when you felt free, and things were just rolling for you. Just pick one time. It doesn't have to be something major. For me, I think about this period of time when my first son was about a year and a half, and we were living in Longmont, Colorado. And we had this little house that was close to town, and I could push him into town and do all my grocery shopping and meeting up with friends and other little toddlers during the day. And I had a small private practice and was doing meaningful work. And I was growing so much in my identity, figuring out what it means to be a mom and how to love and how to be a mess and how to recover from something so physically challenging, such as giving birth. And it was probably one of the more challenging times of my life, but also the most rewarding because I was so engaged and flexible and committed to doing something that really mattered to me, which was being a new mom and having a private practice. So think about that for yourself. When was a time when you felt that sense of vibrancy? And I want you to think about that time in relationship to these 6 core processes. So the first one is values. Did you have a sense of meaning and purpose that helped you stay motivated? The second was diffusion. Did you have maybe thoughts of self-doubt from time to time or thoughts that maybe judgment of yourself or others, but you were able to kind of let them go and get some space for them and not let them rule your life? The third process is acceptance. Were you open to your full experience? I know that for me as a new mom, there was so much that I accepted and had to learn to accept: changes in my body, uncertainty, loss of control, a messy home, irritability. What about for you during that time when you were living at your fullest? How are you relating to your emotions? Were you open, allowing? And then what about your sense of self? So when we are psychologically flexible, and yes, I'm going through the 6 core processes of psychological flexibility here, how they relate to you. When you were at your best, were you connected to something bigger? Did you have some space from your ego? Did you see yourself as of value, but not all important? That's our sense of self as context. The 5th process has to do with being present. How present were you? Were you engaged in the here and now when you were with that vibrant version of you? And then the 6th has to do with committed action, your behavior. How were you acting? What were you doing? How are you demonstrating what you cared about? When we engage these 6 core processes in our life, and we also engage in things like taking care of our bodies, eating well, moving our bodies, being connected to a community, then life opens up for us. These are the 6 core processes that make up psychological flexibility, and then the processes that Stephen Hayes is talking about in the show today. I could go through those 6 same processes and ask you about a time when you were at your worst, a time when you were struggling, a time when you were stuck. And I would bet you were pretty disconnected from your values. You were pretty caught up in your thoughts. You were resisting what was, not accepting. You had a sense of self where it's either all me or it's all my fault, and couldn't take perspective on you. You're probably caught up in the past or the future, and probably acting in some ways that weren't aligned with your values. That's psychological inflexibility. So, Dr. Hayes is going to talk about these processes in a more kind of global way today. And I'll see you on the other side where we'll kind of home in on one of them. And over this next season, we're going to continue to unpack them. We are going to continue to explore them because this is your life in process, which means you're engaging these processes, you're practicing these processes, you're exploring them in a personal way, seeing what works for you, and it's never ending. And I'm doing it right alongside you. So, looking forward to this episode and see you on the other side. Don't forget your daily practice.